Hello everyone and welcome to the second video on creating xamarin.forms e-commerce application. Today we're actually going to be making product details page in which we'll display product images, name, description, size, and the famous buy button. So that's going to be very fun. So let's move to the product details, the product page, and let's change some styles here. And now we'll use the gesture recognizers. So when user tap on a product, we need to navigate to product page details. So that's why we'll use tab gesture recognizer and bind the command to show product details command. So define the binding of the command here. And we need to define numbers of properties like the number of taps required. In our case, it's 1, and the command parameter, it will be binding to that, which means we pass the selected object. The collection view, and the collection view will bind the selected item to selected product. So let's move to the view model and let's define the selected product property type of product model and the show product details command in the constructor in which we'll define a new delegate command type of product model and takes show product details. So this method will define inside this method the navigation method. So we'll navigate to the product detail page and we pass the serialized object of product. So let's move to the views here and add a new page called product detail page view. And we need to change in the show product details the name of the page. So let's define two regions here, the property and the commands. And let's override the initialize method. And inside we'll get the passed object of product. So we need to make parameter.getValue type of product model. And we pass the key, it will be here, the product. So the product is serialized, so we need to change the get value to type of string, and we use JSON converter dot deserialize object here, type of product model. And let's see in the emulator here when we tap a product here. So here we navigate to the product details. We need to just remove this part of path, navigation path, in order to delete the second navigation bar at the top of the page. So here, let's try it again, and that's correct. So now in the XAML page, we need to bind the title to, for example, the name of a product. So that's nice. Now the product service, we need to make a new method called getProductsImages, and this method takes the product ID. So we give the product ID, and the return we need the path of the different product images. So here we need to add a new structured data model called product image model. And inside the product image, we need to add a new list. So here we're gonna go fast. It's just a mock. We need to define a new product image model. We define the ID, the product ID, and the image. So here we simulate the database because this is a mock. So in the return, we need to make image that where product ID is equal to product ID. That's great. Let's change the return type to enumerable of product image model, and in the interface here we need to define the signature of this method. So let's move to the product detail page view model. In the property region, we need to define a product image list type of enumerable of string. That's cool. And in the constructor, we need to inject the iProduct service like dependency. And let's create a field, read-only field. And in the initialize method, we need to initialize the product image list switch the product model.id. So here I think we need to change the return type to enumerable of string. So that's why we'll select only the product.image and change to string, and the same thing on the interface. We need to change to enumerable of string. That's great. So on the product details page, we need to display the different image of this product. So we need to add a tag called carousel view, in which we'll bind the item source to product image list. That's nice. So it's like in the HTML, we have carousel view. Now let's define the item template, how we're gonna show each image. So in the data template, let's define a new stack layout, and inside we'll make a frame, and this frame, inside this frame, we're gonna define the image. So the source will be binding to the current item because it's a string, so we need to define only the binding without nothing. So for the frame here, let's make some styles here. So we have a shadow, a border color to dark gray, the corner radius to 5, and let's define the height request to 300 pixels, and let's say horizontal options and vertical option to center. So that's cool. We need also to define the aspect of image to aspect fill. So let's run the application and see the result. So we select presses here. Let's select the first one. That's awesome. Here we have our carousel view. So we can slide right or left. So let's delete the 300 height here. So, and add some margin and padding 0 and 5. And let's say the vertical options, it will be center. And I think we need to change the row definition to auto, and it will take all the content of the parent container. So let's add some margin here, let's say 0.5, and that's awesome. Great. So now, like in the HTML, we need to add an indicator of the current item. So that's why we'll use the indicator view. Let's give it a name called indicator view. And let's define some properties here, like the indicator color, the selected indicator color. We'll use the light gray and the dark green. And the horizontal options will be in the center. That's great. Let's move to the carousel view and define the indicator view. It's the name of the indicator view. So in our case, it's indicator view. And let's add a new row. 202. So now we need to define a new label. It will represent the product name. So here the text will be equal to product name actually, and we'll change this to the real binding. Let's see what we have here. So let's move to the product details page view model and define a property type of string and called product name. And in the initialize method, let's affect this product name to the product.name. And I think we need to define also the price of the product. So let's add a new property, new bindable property type of string float. It's a price. And we need to initialize it in our initialize method. So it will be equal to product model.price. It's nice. Now let's move to the XAML page and let's make the binding. So here binding to product name property. And in the same way, we need to add the price label. And it will be binding to the price, and the string format is a currency, so it will be two curly braces here, 0 C2, which means we'll take 2 digits from the price after the comma. So let's move to the app XAML page and let's define some styles here. So let's begin by creating a new style called product title label style. Target type, it will be the label, and we'll define here the text color and let's say the font size, it will be value of I think 15, yes. And let's change this static properties to dynamic style, and let's copy it on our product title or product name. So in the same way, we need to make a style for the price. So based on our product title label style, and we need to change the font size here to 18 and change the key to product price label. And in the product detail page, we need to add the style to the product price label. That's great. So now we need to move to the carousel view and add the colon span to 2, because we have here 2 colons here, and the same way for the indicator view. And in the style here, we forgot to add the target type. It will be the label. So let's run the application and see. Yeah, we have an error here. We need to bind the base on static resource, the key of our target style. That's great. So let's run the application and let's see the emulator here. Select dress from the menu and let's see this product, for example. That's nice. We forgot to add the margin here to 5 and add the grid.colon is equal to 1, and the price will be in the column number 2. So here in the style here we need to define the vertical options and the horizontal options to center. That's great. So we can slide right and left. Good. So now we need to define some style, something more stylish for the price. So let's use a frame, and inside we define the label of the price, and let's define some properties here. That's great. So we need to define background color, something stylish gray. So good. We need only to define the text color to white color, and let's add a new color here in the list, and the stylish gray color, and we bind to static resource. In the same way, we bind here also the background color to the gray stylish color. So we need to run the application again. So we forgot to define the vertical and horizontal options and the price style, so it will be like the title, product title. So let's see here. That's awesome. That's great. So now we need to make change the size of the first row, and I think that's great. So now we need to add a buy button. So let's move to the style, and I have already prepared the button style code. So here we have two styles, one for the frame and the second for the button. Define some properties so you can read it. Let's move to the product details page and add a new frame here. Bind the style to the created style and the app XAML page. So it will be static resource to button frame style, and we add the grid, so equal to the row number 3 and the grid column to 2. And let's move this button code inside the frame. And don't forget to add the style. That's great. So now we need to add which size we'll buy here. So add stack layout. Inside we'll use a label for size and a picker to choose which size we'll buy. So let's bind the item source to size list and the selected item to selected size. Change the row here, and the second one, it will be for the quantity, how many items you are going to buy. So let's add some rows here, and let's change to quantity, and let's add the text. It will be binding to quantity property that will be added in the view model. And obviously we need to add two buttons, one to decrease and the other one to increase the quantity. So it will be something like this. And don't forget to add the command in order to increase or decrease quantity. Great. So let's move to the view model and add a new property type of int called quantity. And we need to define two commands here, type of I command. It will be the increase command and decrease command. And the constructor will define these two commands like a new delegate command and takes two methods, increase quantity and decrease quantity. So let's change to increase here and decrease, and let's generate these two methods. And finally, in the decrease quantity, we need to check if the quantity is less or equal than 2. In the increase quantity, we just need to make quantity plus plus. And here we make quantity minus minus. That's great. Now let's add the size list bindable property type of an variable of string and the selected size. So in the initialize method, we need to initialize this list to the different size we have, so small, medium, and large. And the selected size, it will be a bindable property type of string. That's great. So let's run and see. So here we can scroll. So that's why we need to add a scroll view and move all the grid inside it. And it will be scrollable. That's awesome. So that's all for today. We have some stylish product details page. So the next time we'll see how to make the basket on the top right of the navigation bar and how to add a product to the basket. So thank you very much and see you on the next tutorial.